Hey everyone, this is a short video about operating systems and firewalls. My name is Alexander Holloway. I am in ISA 4220 of the fall of 2019 at Kennesaw State University. Alright, let's get started. So first we'll start off with Windows Server, a brief history. Originally created by Bill Gates in 1983, Microsoft Windows was created as a GUI, or graphical user interface, for MS-DOS. Over time, the product went from being just an environment in an operating system to its own complete operating system. The first versions were just graphical shells used on previous OS systems. Then came Windows 95, where it became its own entity. It utilized a 32-bit space and a 16-bit DOS-based kernel for features. There were things we use on almost all our computers in the modern world, such as Windows Explorer, Start menu, and the taskbar. And after a few years, it introduced Windows Explorer 4, which at the time became a controversial subject because it included the Windows desktop icon update option. This allowed the fusion of Internet Explorer and the web to the GUI, which made it possible to display pictures as backgrounds and simplified window navigation in Windows Explorer. This was controversial because Microsoft was accused of monopolizing the PC market by using technical and legal practices to maintain superiority by automatically including their web browser Internet Explorer in their computers, putting Netscape Navigator and Opera out of business, as customers would purchase those instead of receiving it free like Internet Explorer. Present day. After many different updates and improvements through time, which made computers faster, smarter, and able to store more information, we bring ourselves to Windows Server 19. Development. Windows 2019 was developed by Microsoft in October of 2018. It was put on hold for a bit because of some issues in which the user data was being deleted during an upgrade. In some other systems, such as profile folders, things were being moved to another location, but the data stayed in its original file location. After the fix, it was re-released in November of 2018. It can be updated via the Windows Update. Target. The current target market for Windows right now are more business-oriented, small and large businesses. Platforms. Windows 2019 is available on the x86-64 platform. This is a 64-bit version of the x86 instruction set. The x86 instruction set is basically the computer architecture. It is what helps communicate the GUI to the software and the hardware. It helps different versions to communicate through a common binary language. This has helped lower costs of computers over the generations, and is one of the most important things in computing today. Kernel type. Windows 2019 runs on a hybrid kernel comprising of Windows NT kernel. This is a combination of simple kernel and hardware abstraction layer, or HAL for short. The Windows NT has two main components, the kernel mode and the user mode. It is separated into two models that help protect the computer's memory from malicious or any weird software behavior that could be damaging to the data. In the user area, the memory is where some drivers, applications, software execute. The kernel mode is where only the privileged OS kernel runs. GUI. The GUI, or General User Interface, is where we have designed a visual representation of human and computer interaction. This helps humans have an effective operation of the machine and the machine to give immediate feedback, and helps the operator through different decision-making processes. Windows 2019 consists of Windows Shell for the graphical representation and Windows PowerShell for the command line operation. Windows Shell is where familiar things such as the Start button, taskbar, autoplay, and task switcher are. This is also where it uses hierarchy programs such as desktop icon that shows the different folders and files stored on the disk but displays them in a visual manner. Windows PowerShell is configuration management and task automation that uses command lines and scripting to carry out tasks. Key features. Some key features of Windows Server 19 are enterprise-grade hyper-converged infrastructure, GUI for Windows Server 2019, Project Honolulu, security improvements, more efficient and smaller containers, and Windows subsystem that can run Linux. Hyper-converged infrastructure, HGI. Some fundamental components of HGI are things such as storage, computing, and networking. This system has incorporated a system with series of small updates as they come out. Then every few years they come out with what's called an LTSC, or long-term servicing channel. That is a large upgrade or update, but it also includes all the other small updates that came before it. It also has a bundle where if you purchase it, you get a top set of components that come with the purchase of a server license. This helps reduce downtime with its running Hyper-V that enables an increase or decrease of workloads. GUI for Windows Server. Many of the pre-releases of Windows Server 2016 had many updates that did not have a GUI and only supported Server Core or Nano, which did not have GUI configurations. With 2019, professionals in the IT field will once again get a GUI for their servers as well as the Server Core and Nano. So you get the best of both worlds. Project Honolulu. With this addition, it allows professionals to have a central console that can incorporate both GUI and configurations without GUI in their environments. This gives server managers and managers of Windows services easier for administrators to monitor many different servers in their environments. Security. In the past, many security professionals would view asset security as firewalls and would protect and prevent security compromises. With Windows 2019, Microsoft has adopted a view of expect a breach and how to minimize its fixed security compromises. So basically the old way was we have a firewall, it's going to block everything and we're going to be safe. Now, because of technology evolving, Microsoft has adopted this new, you can protect it, but odds are there might be a breach, so let's be prepared for it. This means their view is system is probably already compromised and looks and monitors for any changes. With Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection, it constantly analyzes where threats may come from, fixes them, and auto-blocks any possible attacks. Containers. Over the years, servers and organizations, IT operations have been large and costly. A company that is able to minimize their footprint and IT overhead can be more efficient and improve operations will have a lower operating cost. Windows Server 2019 has reduced the containers by up to 50 to 80%. This allows the organization to operate at the same or even better level, but with less space and cost. Subsystems for Windows. Over the years, many people prefer to run Windows on people prefer to run Linux, but rarely has anyone thought of running both. But Windows Server 2019, Microsoft has added a whole subsystem that can run virtual machines and can run the Linux operating system. This helps other systems on one server, making it more cost efficient to run multiple systems on virtual machines under one system, the Windows Server 2019. Linux Server Ubuntu. Linux Server Ubuntu was developed by Canonical Ltd. This is a privately owned company in the UK founded by Mark Shuttleworth. Source model. It runs on Linux, which is an open source software system that operates like a Unix system. This means that it behaves like a Unix system or command shell, but it is different. There is currently not a way of defining it. Open source means that a source code is allowed by the developer to study, use, distribute, and change the software to anyone for any purpose. This brings a variety of collaboration and views that can't be achieved by a single company. Initial release. Ubuntu 1804 was released in April of 2018. This is one of the long-term updates for Ubuntu. It was supposed to have a new incorporated theme, but the theme was buggy, and they kept the regular 2010 theme. Target. Ubuntu is made to be used for personal computer systems, IoT servers, and cloud services. Update method. Its preferred update method is a software updater. Linux Server Ubuntu platform. Ubuntu runs on the 86-64 platform as well, but it also runs on IA-32, ARM-HF, which is the ARM v7 plus VFP v3-D16, just to name a few other platforms that it can run on. This makes it very available. So under availability, the kernel, because Ubuntu is open source software with world's worth of contributors, it is available in over 55 languages. The kernel type is monolithic. This means that the OS is operating within the kernel space. It is different because it uses a high-level virtual interface with the hardware of the computer. With this, modules can be added directly to the kernel user interface. There is only one UI for Ubuntu, and it's called the GNOME. This is an acronym for GNU Network Object Model Environment. This is a free and open source UI. GNOME 3 is the general environment used by most Linux distributors. Some key features of Linux Server Ubuntu are, with this system, they added some color emoticons, a pre-installed application called To Do. This helps with time management. It's a software program that helps with times management, project management, and software development. It also added a minimal install choice, which allows the user to only put the system tools or web browser on their computer. It also included a kernel version 4.15, which added the CPU controller to the V2 interface and added a AMD secure encryption for memory. For some entertainment purposes, I noticed that each version has a different nickname, and this specific version has a nickname of Bionic Beaver. Firewalls. Some key features of the Windows firewall are firewalls. A firewall is anything that can filter exchange of digital information and packets such as software, hardware, or a combination of both. How does it work? A firewall has a set of rules that compares to your computer rules, and it inspects the incoming packets, and if the packets meets the passing criteria, it'll allow it to pass to the TCP/IP protocol. If it does not meet the requirements, the packet is not allowed passage. Logging. Some firewalls can be configured to log any coming and going of user credentials in packets and to see who gains access or anyone who tries to gain access but is denied. Some systems do it automatically, while others need to be configured specifically. When it's automatic, it creates an allowed communication response. When it's manually configured, an administrator will put specific expectations to the firewall through programs or ports. This is the type that needs to be configured to allow connection to an SQL server. Configuring. If you have a Windows OS, you can use the Microsoft Management Console or NetSH to configure your firewall. The MMC is a snap-in in the Windows system that helps simplify configuration of advanced firewall systems. NetSH is a tool used as an administrator in the command prompt. With this, the owner can directly input commands to the appropriate helper, then it does the command for you. All systems that support an SQL server have this dynamic link library file that helps with the functionality of the NetSH tool. Internet Connection Firewall. This is the first firewall back on Windows XP in 2001, but was soon no longer in use because it had issues with being compatible with previous versions. And the screens to configure it were behind a lot of other network screens and was rarely used. Through 2003, there were a few attacks taking advantage of flaws in the Windows service, which led Microsoft to significantly improve both the interface and functionality, and was called, now renamed, Windows Firewall. It has had more improvements over the years and is today called the Windows Defender Firewall. Linux firewalls. Linux has a firewall that most of the Linux and Ubuntu uses is IP tables. It is a firewall built for Linux systems that is very flexible. It is a firewall utility that uses policy chains to block or allow traffic through the use of command lines. IP tables comes installed on most Linux and Ubuntu systems. GUI alternatives. If you prefer configuring firewalls through a UI, there are some alternatives such as Firestarter. That being said, IP tables is simple to use with just a few command lines, but if you get one wrong, you can lock yourself out. Chains. IP tables uses actions called chains, such as forward, input, output, and caveat. Input is used to control traffic that is on its way into the system. Forward is for connections that are incoming but are not being delivered locally. Output is used for connections that are leaving the system. The caveat is used to allow traffic both ways from input and output information. Defaults. When configuring Linux systems, you need default responses. Some of these responses are policy chain, connection specific, and allowing and blocking connection. Policy chain is what is defaulted on IP tables to do if a connection does not match a rule. Most of the time you want to accept connections. This will allow you to use IP tables to specifically deny specific ports or IP addresses. If you have specific servers with sensitive information though, you can configure it to drop all connections except specific ports with IP addresses. Connection specific responses are accept, drop, and reject. Accept allows the connection. Drop denies the connection and acts like it never happened and does not tell the sender that it was not received to avoid them knowing of your firewall. Reject is the same as dropped, but it sends a signal back to the source letting them know they were rejected. With these configured, you can allow or block specific connections. Logging. Configure your logging monitoring and it is recording the correct information to quickly fix a problem if one arises. Also check to make sure the size and scope of logging and monitoring are correct, because most of the time default logging and monitoring is set to a very small amount. Network configuration. Network configuration is rarely important because servers like a production server should have IPs that remain the same so that clients can find them. This should definitely be put behind a firewall for protection. It would also be great to have some DNS servers for redundancy. It will take several hours for network configuration to show, so make sure it is configured well before you make a server go live. Service configuration. Many Windows servers have many services included by default and that are required for the system to run, but many that are not required. It is beneficial to disable these that are not required because it reduces the size in which a would-be attack could happen on your server or computer and you just want primary functionality. Update installation. It seems like common sense, but these days constantly check for updates, but one of the best ways to keep your server or system safe is to keep it updated. Firewall configuration. Having a properly configured firewall is essential, but you want to make sure that the necessary ports are open when considering firewall, and hardware firewall is always better because it helps take the load off the server or system and offers more options when deciding what type of traffic you want. Linux hardening policies. Some hardening policies for Linux are CIS and STIGs. CIS policies that are properly configured will eliminate about 85 to 95% of the vulnerabilities on your system, but following pre-made policies like this can be kind of hard for non-professional people to set up. General rules. Here are some general rules to follow when hardening Linux. Do not install unnecessary hardware. Don't use a root account for something that does not require it. Do your best to have a secure firewall and don't allow any unnecessary access. Only use sudo for individual commands, and you should only set a server to root during time of installation. This way it ensures that it closes all unnecessary privileges before it accepts any requests. Which distribution? The CentOS 7 distribution and the Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 both are very highly tested and highly approved certified tools. CentOS is an open source and free. They are an enterprise class built from past packages and snapshots, good with the community help, and they are both reliable and stable. Guides. A really good tool to use called SCAP, which stands for Security Content Automation Protocol. This provides ways of checking configurations to make sure they are correct. It has options of doing compliance evaluations, so it evaluates to make sure your system is in compliance with its specific policies. And it also helps with checking your server or home system with vulnerability management. Thank you very much for watching the slide. I appreciate it. I know I'm not an expert in all this, but I appreciate any and all criticism. Thank you very much. Bye. Here are some of my references.